So for those who don't know, this is a series called In the Company of the Saree, and it's a series launched by Panjavarnam. And the attempt with this is really to engage in conversations with women. Oh, hello, Saree on my mind. Really, women like that, for whom the Saree and the larger world of the Saree really matters. So we've had two guests already, and we're looking forward to this conversation with Sumitra, who is a huge wearer of the saris and weaver of stories. Hi, welcome Sumitra. I'm just going to send you an invitation to join this conversation. Hi, Viji.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Absolutely. Can someone just give us a thumbs up if Sumitra is audible?
Let me just adjust the camera slightly.
Yeah.
How's that?
Okay, lovely. So thank you, Sumitra, for taking time off to be with us as part of this conversation series initiated by Panjavarnam.
Thanks for thinking of me, Akhila. I really appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of Panjavarnam. Viji is one of my favorite people. She's so warm, and her brand, I think, is a reflection of her values. So it's always a pleasure to do continued work with Panjavarnam.
I agree. I'm a huge fan of the brand as well. And I've been following you. I'm a huge wearer of the sari myself, and I've been following your Insta handle. And it's really, really inspiring to see somebody who makes the sari wearing a habit. And we'll get to that as we go along. But firstly, I want to just formally introduce you to, for some of them who may not be, familiar with your career trajectory in that sense. So Sumitra Selvaraj, based in Malaysia, has spent the last 18 years immersed first in broadcast journalism, later in public relations with the Grey Worldwide, Malaysia. She's been a news anchor and is an experienced television host and a master of ceremonies for several corporate and entertainment events. She's equally comfortable behind the camera and has produced, directed, and written a number of news, current affairs, and infotainment type of programs. Apart from anchoring, she's also a writer with a couple of short stories to her credit that have also won her awards and accolades. Sumitra she's here also because she's the founder of Sarees and Stories, an Instagram platform with over 60,000 followers, where she documents her daily sari wearing habit. Thank you, Sumitra. Firstly, I love what you're wearing and I love how you've paired it. So talk to us firstly about what you're wearing. And I see that you love pairing your saris with interesting blouses. So talk to us firstly about that.
So what I'm wearing is a kanji cotton silk, very, very traditional in its colors, perhaps less traditional in its borders in terms of the pop of color, but this sort of dark, arika oily maroon is a very, very
classic
Panjavarnam color, right? And perhaps later we'll get to a little story or a little background about how I'm actually not a fan of maroon. I never was. It's a very popular Indian color, and it never was a color that I warmed to until fairly recently.
Okay.
So this is actually by Panjavarnam Silks. This is this is a gift from Viji herself,
okay.
And it's really beautiful. Kanchi cottons are dress up, dress down saris as far as
for sure.
You can do the whole pleated up thing, and it looks very neat and for work and all of that. But take a look at that pallu.
Stunning, right?
Yeah,
and stunning.
So to show that off on an evening out is amazing. I'm wearing actually a crop top. It's a jersey, a crop top. It's by Drape Diva. And they do this in a range of colors, and I find them incredibly comfortable. I find this particular sort of style is not very me, which is why I wanted to try. So that's really my aesthetic. Previously in the past, a kanji cotton would have been for me pleated and pinned tightly at the shoulder, and I would have worn a standard blouse. But these days, the ability to be able to take a traditional sari and wear it with a modern crop top it's really who I am.
Right. Lovely. Sumitra, so it's also like, pairing it with the crop top is also like one's own evolution in the whole sari wearing journey. And also, I suppose you're also kind of, as you get comfortable with it, you also want to kind of experiment with it, right?
Yeah, and I think that the whole idea of wearing the unblouse movement, not wearing tailored sari blouses, yes, the experimentation is one side of it, but I think it also opens up accessibility. It suddenly makes a sari a whole lot more accessible to people who don't have blouses, who don't know how to get them tailored, who may not have access to tailors. It's all totally possible.
For sure.
And also who have outgrown blouses. You know what? One of the most frustrating points in my own life was when I found that I had outgrown my sari blouses, and I really didn't want to keep wearing saris. I didn't want to keep going back to the tailor and have her say to me, "Put on a little weight, have you?"
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I unpicked my blouses to the point where there was no more seams left to unpick. I couldn't do it anymore. And crop top has changed that. It's changed the way I look at a sari, because over the last maybe 3 or 4 years of wearing crop tops, 3 years maybe, the sari has become just that much more accessible. It no longer is a case of picking up a sari and then searching for its matching blouse. It's no longer that. It's basically saying what crop top is clean and seeing what sari can go with it.
Can go with it, right? Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally agree with you. I haven't experimented with the crop top myself, but I have experimented with something like a crop top. Like, yeah, and I think you're absolutely right about how it instantly sort of makes this unstitched garment so accessible, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, you're actually kind of, yeah. And I particularly like what you said about going to the, to the designer or the tailor and somebody saying, "Oh, looks like you've gained some weight." Or
I need any reminders. Trust me, I don't need any reminders.
For sure. Yeah. So Sumitra, talk to us about what is your typical day like. How was your day today? Like, let's get a glimpse into your life.
I'm typically up anytime between, if I sleep well, I'm up anytime between 5:30 to 6:30. I'm an early riser. Of late, I've been struggling quite a bit with sleep. So my hours have been a little bit, all over the place. But generally, I'm an early riser and I'm up by about 6:30. The first thing that I need to do is I need to sort the dogs out. The moment I go downstairs, both of them are looking for a lot of attention because, we've spent 6-7 hours away from them and they feel like they've been abandoned. So they need a good minutes of cuddle time.
Cuddling, yeah.
I do their breakfast first, and then a quick cleanup of the house, basically just to it's a very quick once over to kind of just get rid of any stray fur that might have collected overnight, and then I try and resist the temptation to get into chores, and I quickly put my shoes on and I try and get out for a walk.
Yeah, sure.
Half an hour to an hour is ideal for me. And once I've done that, I come back home, by which time my husband has already probably just started his office work. He works from home. So I then have about between 8:30 to 10 or 11 in the morning to start on chores. So there is the house to be swept and mopped, and then there's laundry, there's sort of sorting out of all of that. And then there is, by about 10:30, 11, there's a plan for what to do for lunch. So once I've cooked lunch, and that's out of the way, so she takes a lunch break from between maybe 12 to 1 or 1 to 2, depending on the day. And after lunch, it's really a little bit of me time. And what I do is I spend that time writing or reading, either one. I prefer reading, but I should be writing. And then it's
super.
30, the dogs need to be fed, and dinner needs prepared, and then we eat, and then we just basically chill for the rest of the day.
Right, lovely. So where does the sari fit into this whole scheme of things, Sumitra? So you talk about having made the sari wearing a habit. So do you wear the sari almost on an everyday basis when you go to work, or during this lockdown when we're all working from home, are you still wearing the sari? So I was just kind of curious to, talk to you about that.
I don't wear the sari as often when I'm at home, just out of convenience, I think, because if I'm going straight from a walk into my chores and then into cooking. I don't really have the time to like stop and change and all of that. But if I'm heading out at any point, and that's usually generally after lunch, to run errands, get some meetings done, then yes, I would change into a sari at that point in time. If I was going to work to the office, then yes, it would be the sari on a daily basis.
Right, super. I'm just going to ask, I feel like there's a disturbance in your audio, Sumitra, but I'm just going to check with people who are watching. Is there any, can somebody just give me a...
Can I just check? Let me just check if there's anything in the
room.
Could
you, yeah.
I don't see anything amiss, so I'm not really sure what
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. It's probably at my end, so I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So Sumitra, let's sort of start off by asking you about, what is your connection with the sari? Like, when did you discover that you wanted to engage with the sari so deeply and so deliberately?
So my mum wore a sari every day to work, and so my earliest memories are of watching her get ready for work. She worked in...
And where was this, Sumitra?
Here in Malaysia. She worked with the Inland Revenue Board for 25 years before moving on to the corporate world.
Right.
And she wore, for the first, I'd say, 10, 15 years of my life, certainly, she wore a sari every day to work. 50 years, she switched to corporate power suits, and she was more comfortable in things. And we went over to the private sector. But certainly when she worked in the civil service, a sari is what she wore every day to work. And so I kind of grew up with that ability that if you were going to go to work, that a sari is the most natural thing to wear. So when I started working as a 21, 22-year-old, really, it really didn't matter to me what industry I worked in. I just felt that a sari was workwear.
Right. Yeah, super.
So that's
so that's when you actually started wearing the sari, right? And you wore it like every day, Sumitra? Did you like wear it like regularly?
I would say regularly. I worked, I'd already started wearing a sari when I was a teenager. A lot of it had to do with my size. I was very tall. I reached this height of, nearly 5'9" when I was 11, 12 years old. And so shopping for clothes was a nightmare. Everybody, expects Asian children to be small and petite, and I wasn't. I was a bit of a giant stomping about. So clothes shopping became very, very frustrating. And I found that a sari was very, very forgiving. And because my mum already had such a large
very forgiving, yeah.
Whenever we had dinner parties or whenever we went out, it was easier for me to reach for a sari than it was for me to reach for a dress.
Right.
And because I started wearing a sari out from a young age, 14, 15, 16, we go out to parties, I'm already in a sari. I'm already socializing in a sari. I'm already dancing in a sari. I'm already balance my mundani and my buffet plate and my drink and everything and my handbag.
So easily.
These are skills. These are life skills, and I was learning
No, for sure.
Picking them up at the age of 15, 16, 17. So by the time I finished high school, I wore a sari to my high school prom. I was the only one in a sari, and the night away, it was absolutely fantastic. And really, after that, it was very difficult for me to wear anything else but a sari to formal events. Yeah.
Right. Lovely. I mean, it's beautiful. And I really empathize with you about almost everything that you said, even about, how the sari is really so forgiving, right? And you almost naturally, if you're big built, like how I am, for example, you naturally kind of gravitate towards the sari, and you kind of find like comfort in it, and somehow you feel like you're you're not also judging yourself for some strange reason. Of course, as you grow older, you also start becoming a little forgiving about, your own body in that
Yeah.
sense. So,
and I wonder whether that comfort factor also comes with the build, because it's physics really. I mean, the sari in its length and width is fairly fixed, right? You've got about 6 yards by about 45 inches or so. And it goes without saying that if you are a smaller build or a smaller frame or a more petite person, there is more of the sari for you to have to handle and wind around your frame. For a taller person, it's quite likely that the pleats just fall a little bit easier. That's just not too much material to handle, and that's exactly what I felt like in my younger days in the sari. Everybody kept on saying to me, but it's so difficult, and it wasn't. It had something to do with my frame. It really wasn't difficult to handle on my frame. I wasn't tucking 12 inches of the sari into my undercoat. I was just tucking a couple of inches, and it just worked.
Yeah, for sure. Sumitra, when you wear the sari, you're also someone who's conscious of its weave, like its history. And why do you think, as a wearer of the sari, that empathy and sensitivity to all of these aspects is really imperative?
Well, that's a tough one because I think that's very personal. I think the level of interest in a sari, for me, it has to be personal. See, I don't believe the sari is a sanctified garment. I don't believe, and that's a personal belief, I don't believe that it's a cultural garment. I believe it's a garment of expression, which is why I very rarely feel that you can culturally appropriate the sari. I really think the sari is for everybody. It's an unstitched length of cloth. I don't want it. I do not want to take a sari with India or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Pakistan. I don't want to do that. I don't want to associate the sari with nationality. I think I want to associate the sari with identity. And it's who you identify as, right? And if you identify as a person who is comfortable in a sari, then that's who you should be. Now, when you're comfortable with a sari, you may or may not be interested in the cultural legacy of it. And that's also a facet I find. So I'm particularly interested in the kind of the weave and the intricacies of the sari, simply because my mother and grandmother were aficionados themselves when it came to very, very fine kantavarams, kanto cottons, chettinad cottons. My mother, tussars in particular, and jutes are her real signature. It was difficult not to be able to learn that from them. It was difficult to walk into a sari shop and ignore that they would be able to tell what was a good sari and what wasn't. And so I enough to know that, listen, if I'm going to be wearing the sari, I too want to wear a good sari. I want to know why she's rejecting that sari, but saying this is okay. And so that's where that kind of knowledge and curiosity came from. But the exponential growth of what I could absorb came on Instagram. Once I got on Instagram and once the whole idea of this world of weaves was opened up to me. So yeah, no, I've got to credit Instagram with that 100%.
Right. Sumitra, I often associate like two qualities to the sari, in particular. Like I feel like there's something really honest about the sari and there's also something so authentic about it, right? And how does one, as a wearer of the sari, also attempt to cultivate these habits? These are really important value systems in that sense, right? Honesty and authenticity. And I notice that you often talk about those two value systems in particular, like honesty and authenticity. Like somehow by virtue of when you wear a piece of unstitched garment that has a cultural history, and I buy your point about, not stereotyping it to any sort of a cultural landscape in that sense, but to also give it a larger window of identity in that sense. But like honesty and authenticity, could you talk about these two values in that sense?
I want to be honest and authentic as much as possible. I would not dream of telling other people to do the same. I think it would be great if all of us were honest and authentic. I think a lot of the problems of the world would be solved. But it's a hard journey to get to the pinnacle of honesty and authenticity, and I don't know if I'm even a tenth of the way there in the way that I present myself, because we all have our private side and we all have our public side. I certainly do.
Absolutely.
What I do on Instagram is an extension of my expression, yes, but it's also an extension of my need to document on social media, and that's a very different side of me, of who I am at home. I am an introvert for all intents and purposes, and people always say to me, "Oh, but how can you be an introvert who's comfortable in front of the camera?" I think most people who are comfortable in front of the camera tend to be introverts. That's a sweeping generalization, but
that's a super interesting insight. Wow.
I think it has something to do with the fact that it's very easy for me to interact with a camera because I don't feel like I have to speak to 1,000 people. I am speaking to as many people as I can, and I mean every word I say, but I don't have to deal with the feedback loop of 1,000 people, which is tough for me to handle. Which is why social media is ideal for somebody like me, because it allows me to express myself to the full extent of my personality, and I do. The personality that you see on Instagram is very much the personality that I am at home, but perhaps the persona is different. I don't necessarily like long sort of stretches of talking when I'm at home. I'm quite happy to be quiet for 6 hours, and that's absolutely fine by me.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Speaking of feedback and speaking of this sort of personality that we, in some sense, project onto social media, which is, of course, an extension of our personality, but may not necessarily, I buy your point. But I know that you've been talking lately, Sumitra, about cyberbullying and, about how people just go ahead and freewheelingly say whatever the hell they want to say, right? Because it's a social media platform. Could you just share your insights on that?
So I think that's a very clear line between the freedom of expression, which I wholeheartedly support and I wholeheartedly agree with. And then there is cyberbullying, and then there is two different things. And I think very often cyberbullying is a term that gets bandied about quite easily. If there's a difference of opinion on a post, if there are two people who come to kind of an impasse about a subject or a topic, immediately, it becomes, this is cyberbullying because you don't agree with me. Not agreeing with somebody is not cyberbullying. Disagreement and conflict are vital.
It's very important,
Communication, they're vital for discourse. If you don't have conflict, don't have a difference of opinion, then we would live in an extremely
the world would be a really boring place. Yeah, for sure.
But there has to be a social contract, an agreement of how communication is conducted on social media. And let me just give you this example of the kind of entitlement that we see. Very often when we are on social media, and I might put up a post and I might get lots of comments about it, and then you might get a couple of people saying, okay, you should have really worn a green blouse with that sari. And I always think to myself, it's not very difficult to examine intent. Now, when you see a picture of somebody wearing a sari and you think that a green blouse would have looked so much better, do you really want to say to them, go away and change your blouse and make it green? Or are you really thinking, if I wore that sari, I'd wear it with a green blouse? Two completely separate things. Two completely separate things. And the ability to be able to express that is so crucial. I would actually welcome people on my feed coming and saying to me, I really like that blouse. I'm going to go away and I'm going to try it with a blue sari because I think it looked better with blue. That's it. Good for you. I'm so glad that you've been inspired by something that you said, now you want to make it your own. But asking me to go away and change something about my appearance so that you can see what it looks like, now that's entitlement. And we're still we've still not crossed into cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is when for me, there's an intent to hurt, and when there is an intentional kind of ganging up, and the whole cancel culture that comes into it, where everybody kind of wails on a person's choices and says, you should not be doing this. I always think there is a right way to give feedback, and then there is the cyberbullying way to give feedback, and one of them ends up in tears every single time. And it's a problem. It's a problem because social media is about expression. So you will get people expressing themselves in all sorts of ways. If you see a person wearing a sari with a bikini top, it might offend you deeply because your cultural connect to the sari is perhaps something that is offered to a deity and then only worn, and precious, sacred, and cannot be defiled in any way, shape, or form to you, right? But to somebody else, wearing that sari is just an expression of their personal style. It's very, very difficult for you to turn around and kind of say to that person, well, you could if you wanted to. You could say you shouldn't be wearing it with a bikini top, but it wouldn't really get you anywhere. So what are your choices at that point in time? You decide as a content consumer what you want to see. And I always think that the onus is on the content consumer as much as a content creator. As much as I have a right to put out what I want to see on social media, however I want to express myself, the content consumer has every right to be able to curate their own following. So why don't they do that? Why don't they decide to follow accounts and people who are aligned with their values rather than trying to change the people around them?
For sure. That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sumitra, talk to us. I know, when you sort of have an Instagram following, also with great power comes great responsibility, right? I mean, you have to, wear a sari. You have to, say something interesting to kind of keep that going. I'm sure it can be overwhelming some days. I'm sure you have your good days and bad. Do you post every day? And sometimes has it been a bit overwhelming? I mean, to kind of keep at it.
If I'm in a sari, if I'm wearing a sari, I will try and post a picture. And the reason for that is simple. My motivation to be on social media is to document my saris, and that's it. That's reason number one. That's reason number one, and that will never ever change. I'm not here to be an influencer. I'm not here to get free saris. I'm not here to gain a following. I'm here to document my saris on a daily basis. And so while I am naturally, despite somebody who works in front of the camera, I'm naturally not somebody who's comfortable being photographed. I kind of forced myself into it at the very beginning, thanks to some very, very helpful colleagues who kind of grab me and place me in a well-lit spot and say, turn your head this way and put your hand this way, and that's it, snap, that's done. And so really, the photograph was the more difficult part of the Instagram post, because writing is second nature to me. It takes minutes to write an Instagram post. I write stream of consciousness. I don't go back and edit what I write, and I don't say this out of boastfulness. I'm a writer. I better be damn well good at what I do. I am a writer, and I write well. And so what you see on my Instagram posts is expression, or it's an extension of my professional capacity.
Right. Sumitra, you speak about documenting your sari collection. Can we sort of assume that you have a really large collection, but you also speak about wearing and re-wearing the sari? I noticed that you also speak about how a sari must be worn and re-worn again and again, right? I'm curious about how you, how do you kind of, what is your sari wardrobe like? Do you kind of buy weaves, a particular kind of weave consciously? And how do you also use your saris? Because on your Instagram page, I don't see you repeat your saris. Every time I'm seeing a new sari. So how do you kind of keep this collection going? And how do you also, use the sari well so it is, so sort of you wear it and you sort of make it your own?
Yes, saris are repeated very often on my Instagram feed, and you probably don't because it spans over 2,500 or more posts, right? But you've also got to remember I've been repeating saris for the last 20 years of my life. And the reason why I started this project was because so many of my saris were to hand-me-downs to begin with, because so many of my saris had been in constant use for so many decades before they arrived in my hands, I knew that they wouldn't have very many more years in my hands. So my grandmother's in particular, I'm really glad that I got a chance to wear them and wear them well. Because many of the saris that I started off this age with 4 years ago have now fallen to pieces. And that's fine. I'm very rarely sentimental about saris. I think saris are meant to serve a purpose, and their purpose is to clothe you. And if they clothe you with memories and legacy, that's even better. But when it's time to go, it's time to go. It's hanging on to it's just because I feel that a memory is associated with them. A memory is associated with all of my saris. It is my legacy. It's who I am. It runs through my DNA, and I don't need a bigger reminder than that. So what I do, I haven't really bought saris in the last last 2 years for sure. I haven't bought saris for myself. It's because I do a lot of sari reviews for Instagram, and I knew that because I was going to be getting these saris, there was absolutely no need for me to add to my collection. I very rarely feel the need to buy saris. Yes, there are weaves on a wish list that I really want, but I've gone beyond the point of covet. I used to really think that I really need to have this, but I've gone past the point because I have enough, and enough at the moment currently stands at perhaps somewhere between 200 to 300 saris, but I also have access to my mum's collection, which is of the same amount, and my mother-in-law's collection, which is of the same amount. So it's easily 1,000 saris to be able to pick and choose from. Should I ever get but that won't happen. And the way I keep my saris is I wear my saris a good 3 or 4 times before sending them off to the Adobe. Oh, well, this was pre-COVID times anyway. And the reason for that is because I work predominantly in air-conditioned studios, and television studios are kept between 15 to 17 degrees Celsius. And so there is not a bead of sweat. And the sari doesn't touch your body anyway, doesn't it? So unless the sari was soiled, I would see no need under it. So I would come home and I would hang the sari up, and whatever saris that I wore with the period of a month, I would keep in that cupboard and then repeat as. And then once I used those 3 or 4 times, then I'd send those to Adobe and start a batch of 30, 40 saris. Because that is how many I wear a month. There's 22 work days a year, but then there's weekends and there's events to attend. So easily I would end up wearing in the 30 to 35 saris a month.
What about accessorizing the sari, Sumitra? Like somehow, like I often think that when you wear a sari, like at least I do, I always sort of wear a bindi. I try to pull out some little jewelry I have, and just get out of the usual like diamonds that I'm wearing. Something I make an effort to at least like whatever. Do you do that, or do you feel that the sari sometimes?
I should because I think I've got nice jewelry. I've got nice jewelry that I've collected over the years, but I am lazy, and it doesn't occur to me to accessorize as much as I should. But I love the idea of it when I do remember, and when I do have the time to make the out and having a look at what kind of appeals to me. But I usually stick with what I wear on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Are there, like you talked about some weaves on your wish list, Sumitra? Could you talk about the weaves that you'd really like to own, and some also your favorite weaves, like weaves that you keep sort of returning to in some sense, that make you feel like the most comfortable?
My classic kind of workwear sari is a chettinad cotton, a starched chettinad cotton. That's what I'm most and of course, you know, kanji cottons are great as that little level up. And really, because for so much of my career, I needed that pleated and pinned sort of style to keep my hands free as I moved through a studio. It was, you know, those sort of starch saris really served me well. And really, until I started this Instagram journey, I really did focus on those because those were the saris that I inherited. You know, I wasn't going out and buying new saris. I had no need to. I had a massive collection that I inherited from my grandmother. My mother's wardrobe was partially open to me, so not open to me, in case I destroyed them, but a lot of her workwear saris herself wore back in the 70s and 80s were all available to me. So the other sort of sari that I would wear to work is a very, very old-fashioned, a 70s, 80s type of printed silk. You know, and I still wear a lot of those saris to work and to events because I find them extremely easy to wear. My love affair, my relationship with Panjavarnam has been an up and down thing. You know, they have, it's been a love-hate thing, and currently we're in a love kind of phase, and it's all going well. Really, that's just not many saris that I would say no to. I probably don't feel very comfortable in chiffons and georgettes because they tend to cling, and I don't like the way they feel on me. But besides that, you know, I have a real soft spot for ikats. Odisha and Telangana ikats are something I have an incredibly soft spot for.
I know.
What's on the list? You know what? That's really hard to say. I'm going to say what's on the impossible list. The impossible list is a Patan Patola, which is never going to happen. But, you know, it's nice to think about that one day I could wrap myself in that art. Yeah.
Right. Lovely. You know, do you also like experiment with your drape? Do you like drape your saris differently? I went through your page. I did see that you've sort of draped the sari differently a couple of times. But do you like experiment with?
No, not for work. I mean, I'm a very much pleated and pinned.
Yeah.
Even the idea of wearing a starched cotton is a fairly new kind of, fairly new in my repertoire. I'm really boring like that. You know, every now and then I'll see a drape that I have the idea of, and I would attempt it just to see what it feels like. But yeah, no, I'm stock standard when it comes to drape.
Yeah, there is a question, Sumitra. Someone wants to know, I noticed that wearing sari on a daily basis would leave an impression on the hip area of wearing the underskirt. So what's your tip on avoiding getting that?
You know, wear your pavade scar proudly, because, you know, I've had one for 20 years now and it's not going anywhere. I think some of the newer underskirts are quite good because they have got a slightly elasticated band that run around.
Yeah.
And are super comfortable. I've actually tried a couple of those new type of underskirts, and I find them to be extreme. The waistband is extremely comfortable. So if that's something that you would like to try, go ahead. My only advice is that those sort of elasticated waistbands don't work too well for heavier saris like Kanjivarams, for example. Kanjivarams have genuine Kanjivarams have a real weight on them, you know, and the last thing you want is your inner skirt kind of folding forward. However, I've seen some of those with the elasticated waistband and a drawstring, so that might work. But I always think that if you're going to try a new underskirt, please always try it at home first with the sari that you wish to wear, not during the event day. Don't kind of put yourself through the stress of trying it on for the first time and then going to the event or whatever it is and feeling self-conscious. Never ever do that. That's the one thing that will turn you away. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Sumitra, by virtue of, you know, sharing your points of view, writing stories, and wearing the sari while sharing these stories, do you feel you're also like, you know, doing two things? One is influencing and motivating so many more people to wear the sari with comfort and confidence, but also like giving voice to so many of those emotions and ideas that you share that many people may not have the courage or the conviction to be able to like say that. And how do you often wonder about how your sari documenting project actually has now become the sort of a vehicle through which, you know, you're sharing these ideas that have the potential of influencing and impacting people, and not just merely from the point of view of, you know, this is an ikat and this is beautiful, but also about the importance of, like, I love the idea about cyberbullying, the need for empathy and sensitivity. I noticed your post uh, on suicide, which I really picked up, and I wrote a blog about it as well. So do you think that there's also a great sense of, I mean, responsibility in that sense, from what was merely a sari documenting project to something that is actually motivating and inspiring people to wear the sari and also speak about their, you know, their feelings and emotions in that sense?
I think it needs to be clear, and you know, I say this on a regular basis. Saris and stories isn't about encouraging people to wear saris. It's about encouraging them to wear whatever they want to wear. Because saris and stories for me is my way of letting my personality shine in my own community, in my own space. And it's really about saying that this is who I am. I'm really comfortable in the sari. I sound like this, and I write like this, and I look like this, and this is me. You can be whoever and whatever you choose to be. And so that's what it's about. You know, it would be silly of me it would be fairly remiss of me to not admit that there is a fair degree of influence. If I am going to be wearing a sari on a regular basis, then there are people out there who are tempted with the idea and will certainly be perhaps inspired. And that's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. But I also feel that, you know, influence on social media is a double-edged sword. Huh? I think I like the idea of being inspired by things that I see on social media, but influence is, and I say this because I worked in PR, I say this because I come from a public relations background. Look at an post that they see on social media and be able to take the idea.
Right. Sorry, I just lost your video for just a little bit, Sumitra. I'm just going to ask you, I do know that you're a voracious reader. What book are you reading right now?
Let me just show you. I'm reading The Sellout by Paul the Booker Prize back in 2016. It's satire, and I think he's one of the finest Black American writers you know, writing at the moment. So going through this, and it's hilarious.
What's it called? What's it called, Sumitra?
The Sellout.
Oh, The Sellout, of course. Yeah. I haven't got around reading it. Yeah. Right. I also noticed that you watch a lot of cinema. Like, are there any shows that you watched recently that have?
What was the last thing? I'm watching something on Netflix at the moment. Sashi and I both like art quite a bit. You know, every city that we go to that we visit, our first point of call is usually a museum. And so there is this fantastic series on Netflix called Abstract, and it's all about the design of art, and it's fantastic. It's absolutely right. So on that at the moment here.
Wow. You know, I'm going to round off this conversation. If nobody has any questions, I'll take questions if there are any. But I wanted to ask you this question, which I read on one of your posts, and I thought it was beautiful. And Roma is one of my favorite films that I've watched in the recent past. And you talked about how there's a really powerful line in that film where no matter what they tell you, we women are always alone, right? I just want you to talk about that idea and you know, why it really resonated with you, Sumitra. I mean, it resonated with me as well. I remember making a note of that line when I watched the film as well. But I'm curious to hear what about that line really struck you.
I'll be honest. It wasn't the gender inflection of it. Easily substitute people with the word woman, and it would mean just as deeply to me that, you know, in the end, people are always alone. And I think what that speaks of to me is the fact that we are all individuals. We are so deeply individual in our design that I really think it's impossible for another to ever know us as well as we know ourselves. And I think that ultimately makes us a little bit alone some of the time, that you will have a worldview of a situation that perhaps not everybody will understand, and perhaps you will have a worldview that nobody else in the world understands, even those closest to you. And, and that struck me about the line that I think as a human race, while we thrive in society and while we thrive on socialization and while we thrive on the idea of community, we are truly alone.
Yeah, and more so now with the lockdown, and you know, I think this is also especially true in the current context where we're all kind of locked up in our homes, of course, with our families, fortunately, and you know, and we have nothing to really complain about. We're having this conversation, so we're definitely among the you know, the more privileged ones in that sense. But definitely, words like alone sort of resonate with us more now. I suppose, like also because of the situation that we are in, which brings me to the last question in terms of how are things in Malaysia, Sumitra? Like, you know, are you out or are you still on a lockdown of sorts?
We've had the lockdown. Well, the really serious lockdown was, I would say, about 2 weeks ago. So I think it was 2 weeks ago. And really there is a lot of movement. People can go back to work if they wish. There are very few bars that are closed at the moment, but everything else is open. And so really it depends on how you would like to look at it. My husband, for example, has chosen to work from home, and he will continue to work from home until the end of the year, probably.
Right.
And he does that because, you know, he has his views about, you know, what is potential on the horizon. And I also think that I'm also somebody who's cautiously optimistic. I love the fact that, you know, things have been relaxed. We've got a low caseload. I don't know what the numbers were for today, but certainly for most of last week in single digits, between 3 and 10 cases per day, which is low. And the hospitals are also not seeing too many new cases. We're not seeing too many spikes either. You know, we're at single digits per day. We haven't gone to 0 cases yet. But, you know, it's a low caseload. But, you know, I'm sure there are still asymptomatic people who are walking around in the community, and that may pose a threat. Cautious optimism is the kind of the need of the day. I think it is like, but I'm somebody who works from home anyway, so things haven't really changed that much for me, and I suspect that they won't. I do miss being on. I missed the beach for some reason. Yesterday, this morning, I woke up thinking about the beach, and we are allowed to travel interstate now, so perhaps a short getaway is on the cards at some point.
That sounds wonderful, Sumitra. Thank you so much for you know, sharing your insights so generously with us. I personally enjoyed this conversation because it resonated so well with me. Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate you taking time off to do this. And we hope to, you know, keep, you know, being able to see all the amazing saris that you wear and the amazing stories that you share with us. And I think we all turn to social media, like you rightly said, for doses of inspiration that we want to sort of take home. And I definitely think that you're one of those handles that really inspires us to kind of, you know, attempt to at least stay true, honest, and authentic about the way we speak and the way we communicate with people. So thank you so much for doing what you do, for documenting your personal saris. And let's be in touch. And thank you to everybody who logged in. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, Sumitra.
Thanks, Akhila. You take care, and I'll speak to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.